Today I want to talk about functional 3D vases for home decor, just like these two you see here, which are also very similar to some of the really popular vases that are going around right now. Now, each one of these vases takes about 4 to 5 minutes to create, so we're going to jump into a new window and start designing. In our new window, I'm going to start from the top plane, and I really enjoy using the form for creating vases. So we're going to create a form, and the cylinder is going to be our closest shape to the finished product. So we're going to start with the cylinder. And most vases I like to think of as being at least twice as tall as they are wide. So we're going to come to 102 or about 4 inches. And then we're going to come up to 204 inches. Now, here is our very, very basic sketch of our vase. And you can see it's just a cylinder, nothing to it. I'm going to add 10 at a minimum height faces, and I'm going to keep my diameter faces at 8 for this project. And we'll say, okay. Now all we need to do is really modify and make them look how we want them to appear. So if you're following along, you can create this however you would like. I'm going to create this to match what we did earlier. So on this top, the top line coming across here, just a simple double click, right click, edit form, and we are able to affect the edge of the face essentially and bring it in or out. And now I want to keep this, knowing that my diameter is 102 inches. I'm going to try to bring this down to about 50. It's going to be a little bit more than 50, but we're going to go to 0.5 and then hit enter. And then from here, I should be able to start to design this and match up with what I want. Again, I'm going to come down to 0.5 one more time just to get us a nice clean edge. And on this next one, I'm going to bring it down to 0.75, maybe even a little bit more, maybe down to 0.65. And right here, you can see I've got a really nice clean base. It looks very similar to what we have earlier. Maybe I'll even grab this one as well and shrink it down just a little bit, just to give us a nice clean edge. Okay, something like that. Now that we are done with our form, the next thing we need to do is turn this. It's basically just your shell. It's a surface. We need to turn this into an actual body so that we can work with it. And the easiest way to do that is to construct two offset planes. The first plane we're going to do is going to be right on your x-axis, and I'll say okay. And then the next plane, using the simple construct offset plane, I'm going to click on our x-axis and drag this up to 200, and that should put us right at the top. Try to get this right to 204, and that'll put us right to the top of our base. Say okay, and there you have it. I've got my planes. Now what I need to do is create a boundary fill, and this is a tool I use a lot. It's very, very simple. All you need to do is select the top plane that we created, the object that you would like to fill, and the bottom plane that we created. Now this bottom plane is going to be this tiny, tiny little one that we need to grab right there. And once you select all the right ones, it's going to turn green, and it'll have a little checkbox right here. We're going to select that checkbox and create a new body and say, okay, there you have it. So now we've got our basic bottle-shaped vase, and from here we need to make it a little bit more decorative. And what I like to do once I get to this point is turn off my construction planes because I don't need to see those. And I'm going to duplicate this a handful of times. The reason I do that is when I'm designing vases, sometimes I'll design 10 or 15 different patterns and play around with it and really just use my imagination as I'm building these. and it'll allow me to pick the best ones to add to my store, or if I'm just creating stuff for the house here, I can pick what's best. And so we're going to copy this a couple times. So we're going to turn off the mesh that we have there and go into our body, do a simple copy, click out here, and a simple paste. And I usually just grab this and pull it to the side. And for this case, I'm just going to do the one. I'll usually duplicate this a handful of times, like I said, and say, okay, now I'm going to turn off body 3 for a minute, and I'm just going to work on body 1. Our next step is to go in and add our pattern or the decorations to this vase. So I'm going to go to the top and create a new sketch. And on this sketch, I'm going to use our circle and use a center point circle. And I like to start right on this edge, and I'm going to pull this out to 6 millimeters, which means I'm going to be cutting into this vase about 3 millimeters at the very, very thickest point here. And then we're going to do just a simple revolve pattern or circular pattern here by selecting our object and then selecting the center point. And I'm going to go somewhere around 28 with this. Now that we've got our 28 circles, I'm just going to say okay and finish the sketch. At this point, we can do a really, really simple extrude with these. So I'm going to turn off this body really fast, select all of these, hold shift and unselect this center piece here, and turn our body back on. Give us a little bit better of an angle, and we're going to do a simple extrude down through the entire piece and say okay. And that looks pretty good. Looks just how I would hope it would look, and should be really, really clean. Now the next step is to add a shell to this. So we're going to grab our body and add a simple shell. I usually try to do these at 2. Sometimes when you add in these decorations, it gives you a little bit of a fit. And so we're going to start this at 2 and see if this works. Now, if you have a slow computer or you have a lot of things running like I do, sometimes this can take a few minutes to run this command and see if we can actually do it. After I played around with this for a little bit, it looks like 1.5 is the number that it's going to let me go and set. So we'll say okay. And now the inside of this is hollowed out. Again, like I said, you've got to play around with these to figure out exactly what the best option is going to be and what it's going to give you. Ideally, I'd like to set that to 0.2, but it looks like that's just not the case for this design. Now, the very last step is just to clean off this top so you can actually see down into this. And there's a couple ways you can do that. You could just push down. I prefer to just cut off the top. Again, I know that I've got 4 millimeters up here to cut off. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose the front, zoom out a little bit, grab this plane. Now I'm going to be right in the middle of the object when I draw this. And so I can come down here, come down about little less than 5, down here to about 4, and say finish sketch. And now with one more simple extrude, I should be able to get this done. So we'll select the sketch, and then I want to make this symmetric and just pull this across and say okay. Add 0.5 just to kind of clean up that edge. You don't want sharp edges on the top of these when I don't have a whole lot of sharp edges on this object. And that's it. There is the first one done and ready to go. After throwing in the ribbed vase, this is what we see in Bamboo Studio. It looks like it's going to take about 5 hours and 3 minutes to print at full size with 2 walls, 4 on the top layer, 4 on the bottom, and 15%. This actually really doesn't matter, as I was talking about when I was designing it, because we should get, essentially, with 2 millimeters, we should get 5 walls total, 2 inside, 2 out, and then 1 full wall through the middle, which is what we have here. Now, the second option that I have this other body over here. For this one, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to design a pattern that's not as symmetrical. It's going to be a little bit different. So on this vase, we are going to do the same thing we did on the other one. I'm going to add a small chamfer of 4 to this, just to clean it up a little bit. Let's say okay. And the next step is to follow very similar. We're going to come up on top here and do a simple sketch on top of this. And I need to create a circle from the center. So I need to find that center. Usually it'll kind of like give you a pretty good idea when you're at the center. If you want to double check, make sure it snaps in there. So I want to come out here and snap in right to this edge, as close as I can get to this edge. Looks like it snapped in right there. And then I'm going to select that sketch and do an offset of -3 millimeters and say okay. Now I've got this line and this line. I can actually take this here and delete it if I want. Definitely going to want it to be out of the way when we go to this next section. So from here, I'm going to use my rectangle tool, and a lot of times I will use a center point rectangle so I can keep everything on line with this. And I'm going to grab this and set my gap to 4. And then I want to make sure that I pull this past this blue line. And just make sure you get it past it. You can make it as far past it as you would like. 4. And then I'm going to say enter. So now I've got this shape here. And then the reason we want this is it's going to keep us from having this sharp edge here. It's going to give us a nice flowing line when we do our next step. So from here, I'm going to do a same circular pattern as we did before. Grab these and going to select our center point. Looks like I need to grab one more down here really fast. And I don't want to do a full, I want to do a partial distribution around this. And I'm going to set this to -100 degrees. This will just bring us out across the face. And I want to go just past 90 just because nothing else is going to be symmetrical on this. Why not keep it to there? And then figure out exactly how many of these I want to put in. And we're going to go with 8 looks pretty good. And say, okay. So from here, we are done with our sketch. And we're just going to rotate this and revolve it. And I need to grab all of these and pull them down with just a simple extrudes. But the problem is I'm going to do this one at a time. So I'm going to speed this up as I do this. And basically, I'm going to go down 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160, 170, and it should give us a nice look that we're looking for. And so we're going to grab this and pull this down to 100. Say okay. Turn our sketch back on and repeat that process. So stick around as I get this done. All right, and we're back. As you can see, it was pretty quick, and I think it turned out pretty good. I do like these nice thin lines. I think it adds an element of just unbalance to this that I really like for home decor. And again, you can play around with patterns, do whatever you like. That part is really easy. Now, I do need to add in one thing before we shell this. I need to add a chamfer to these so that we're not trying to print on an edge here. And so the easiest way to do that is to click on our chamfer and just grab this front part on all of these. And I know that I'm going to be in there um, close to about 3 millimeters, so it should make setting the chamfer pretty quick to get the actual number that I'm looking for. So I'm going to rotate this a little bit, zoom out, and then zoom in just so I can see what's going on here. And sometimes you have to kind of play around with this to get it to work. Looks like I'm going to have to just manually do this because it's wanting to jump around too much. Go to a 2 and a 3, which is where I thought I need to go. But it looks like that's going to be too much. So looks like we're going to play around with some smaller numbers here. 7, 5. That looks pretty good. That looks like I've maxed that out. I still got a little bit of a shelf. Maybe we can go. There we go. So 2.9. And that, when we print that, we shouldn't have any issues. It should print really, really clean right there. Okay. And just like we did before, we'll turn off our sketch. And I'm going to select our body, and we're going to add a shell. Based on our results from last one, I'm going to probably see something very similar here, where we're going to set this to 1.8 and see if it lets us do that. Looks like that's the good number for us here. And say OK. And we'll come and knock this top off just like we did before. Grab the front. And this should set our sketch right in the middle, just below 5. Sometimes these guidelines hurt more than they help. There we go. And finish this sketch. And we're going to extrude this again, doing a symmetric. Say OK. And the very last step, just clean up this top edge. Here we have our second pot sliced and ready to go. Looks like it's going to take 3 hours and 46 minutes. A little less movement here. Just did notice one thing really quickly. This seam is coming right through our design. I want to push that to the back really fast. So I'm going to come over to quality and seam position and move this to the back. And then we're going to slice this really quickly one more time. And that looks a lot better. Now we have that seam hidden, and our design should look really, really good. I may want to twist this a little bit on the plate. I'll play with that around later before I print this, but this is what you get. And it's going to print relatively quickly. And just jump in here so you can see what the layers and the walls are looking like. Again, we've got 2 inside, 2 outside, and the 1 through the middle, just like we had the last time. We will get a little bit of slowdown through here as it does a little pattern trying to tie everything together and make it look good. But this is going to be really, really sturdy at 5 walls and should actually hold water really, really well if you wanted to use this as an actual vase and add water instead of a decorative vase. And there you have it. I've got a couple different vases that we designed relatively quickly and easy. And again, these are just easy, simple patterns. You can rotate these patterns and do them at different angles. You can add in kind of do whatever you want with these. Have fun with it and make it your own. And let me know in the comments what you are able to do. If anybody knows a faster way to add these in, please share it with me because that takes a little bit of time, as you saw. Thanks again for sticking around to the end. If you like this video, please go ahead and hit that like button, share it with your friends, and consider subscribing to the channel. We work really hard to make sure to bring you the very, very best videos and keep them as easy to follow as possible for anybody that's a beginner advanced or even experts, a lot of these are really, really helpful videos for you to watch. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.